Hello all my dear students, welcome back to Prudence coaching English class. As you know, here you will get ICSE, CBSE and WBSE solution of all subjects. Students, as usual, today we came up with another important topic of your book. As you can see, this is New Oxford Modern English of class 5. So, students of class 5, get ready, take out your book and we will start with the chapter A Flash of Light. I will read out from the book and explain you line by line. So my dear students, let us start with the story that is A Flash of Light, written by Nicholas Horsburgh. It was a cold day and Valentine Haüy walked briskly down the cobble street. It was getting dark and he was in a neighborhood he was not very familiar with. He was on his way home and thinking about the warm room and the glowing fire that would greet him on his arrival. A carriage pulled by horses rattled past as Valentine reached the corner of the street. To avoid being trampled by the horses, he stepped back onto the pavement. So my dear students, from this particular paragraph we get to know that this particular man whose name was Valentine Haüy, he was going to his room or house very quickly. Briskly means very quickly, and the day was very cold and he was in a place which he was not very familiar with, means he did not knew much about the place where he was. So that was his neighborhood, means it was near to his house, but then also he was not very familiar with the place and he was walking through the or on the cobble street. Cobbled mean, I think you know, cobbled are these small rounded stones which we use on the roads. So he was walking there and suddenly what happened? He was thinking, means in his mind it was going on that when he is going to reach his home, there he will find fire, glowing fire means burning fire, and which will make the room warm, and when he is going to reach that room, he will get or experience or feel that warmth and he will be happy. So as the day was cold, he was thinking all these things and he was moving. When he reached a corner of the road, he found a carriage which was pulled by the horses. And by that he was confused, rattled. Here rattled word means confused. So this carriage pulled by the horses made Valentine Haüy means confused. Why he was confused? Because it was moving in a way that it might have trampled. Trampled means stamped, means to walk over that particular man, that is Valentine Haüy. So he just stepped onto the pavement, means he just moved onto the pavement or the footpath to avoid this carriage pulled by the horses. So this is the thing which we find in this particular paragraph. Let us move on to the next paragraph. Before Valentine could cross the road, he heard a rustling sound behind him. He turned and saw in the shadows of a wide doorway a man standing with his hat in his hand. "Please, sir," said the man, "spare some money for a poor blind beggar." So in this particular paragraph we get to know that before this Valentine Haüy could cross the road, he found a sound, rustling sound which was behind him, and he saw a man in the shadow, and the man was asking for something, asking for some money from him as the man was blind. Valentine was a kind, soft-hearted man and had thought a lot about the problems of blind people. He had often wondered how he could be of help to the blind. On hearing this request, he at once removed one of his gloves and, putting his hand into his pocket, pulled from it a coin which he put in the blind beggar's hat. So, from this particular paragraph, we get to know about the nature of Valentine Haüy. How was he? How was his nature? So here we get to know he was very kind and soft-hearted person. Even he thought a lot about the problems of blind people. He wanted to do something for this poor blind people. And here we get to know when a man, a poor blind man, came across him and wanted help from him, means wanted some money from him, he did not hesitate. He put his hand in the pocket by removing his gloves and he took out a rupee coin. and he just put it in the hat of that particular blind people who wanted money from Valentine Haüy. Beggar mumbled his thanks and Valentine Haüy walked away. He was halfway across the road when he heard the beggar called out, "Sir, sir, please, just a moment." So in this particular paragraph, we get to know that the beggar, after receiving money from Valentine Haüy, thanked him, and after that Valentine Haüy started to cross the road. When he was half the way to cross the road, at that particular point the blind beggar called him and asked him to wait for some moment. Next, Valentine turned once again and returned to face the blind man. So what happened? Valentine Haüy, who was crossing the road, he turned back and he came across the blind man. Next paragraph. "Surely, sir," said the beggar, who was an honest man, "you have made a mistake. You have given me a franc instead of a sou." So what the beggar is saying? "Sir, you have made a mistake because you have given a franc instead of a sou." So the blind man is thinking, who was very honest, he was thinking that might be the Valentine Haüy has made a mistake and given him a franc instead of a sou. So let us know what is franc and what is sou. Franc, a French coin worth 100 centimes. And on the other hand, sou means a French coin no longer in use, worth 1/20 of the franc. Means what is the value of franc? If 1 franc we consider, then if we divide franc by 20, then we will get the value of sou. Means sou is certainly a lower value money, or amount is lower than a franc. So here the beggar is thinking that might have been, it is the mistake done by this particular man, that is Valentine Haüy. So he called him to say about his mistake. Valentine was astonished. He was not surprised by the man's honesty, but by the fact that he could tell so quickly the difference between a franc and a sou. So what happened? Here Valentine Haüy was very surprised, because he could not think that a man, a blind man, can differentiate between a franc and a sou so quickly. Means he just gone half the way of the road, and the man called him back and he could recognize that what was the amount given to him. "How did you know that I had given you a franc?" asked Valentine. So Valentine is surprised and he is asking that man that how could you know that I have given you a franc? "Oh," replied the beggar, "it is enough for me to pass my finger over it." So what happened? This particular man is saying it is very easy, it is enough, means I can just put my finger on the rupee which you have given and I can say what is the amount. This was like a flash of light in Valentine's head. So this acted as an idea in Valentine's head. Means some new idea came into his head. Valentine allowed the beggar to keep the franc, although it was a great deal of money in those days. As he continued his work, he thought to himself, if the blind can distinguish at the least touch a piece of money, why should they not distinguish a mark, a letter, or a figure? In short, they should be able to distinguish any sign so long as it is raised. So what happened in this paragraph is Valentine Haüy, instead of knowing that it was a franc, not a sou, he let the beggar to keep the money with him, because intentionally Valentine Haüy given that particular money or rupee to this particular blind man, and he just continued to walk back to home. And while walking, he was thinking that if a blind man in such a short time, by passing his finger on a rupee or on a coin, if he can distinguish what the value of money given to him, then why could not he just distinguish or can differentiate a figure, a coin, or anything which is raised, means any letter, mark? Why could not they recognize those things? according to him, he was thinking that they should or they can recognize the marked letter or any figure if it is raised. So this idea was there in his head. In short, they should be able to distinguish any sign so long as it raised. That means, according to him, if anything which is raised means in a level of height than a normal thing, then they should understand the figure or what is the letter or what is the sign which is given to them. With this idea, Valentine took home a blind boy who he found begging at a church door. So while going, he found a blind boy who was begging, means wanting money at a church door. He took that particular blind boy with him. The blind boy became his first pupil. Pupil means student, and learned very quickly how to read from raised signs with the help of money donated by the public. Valentine Haüy was able to start a school for the blind. So what happened? He took that particular small boy or the boy with him, and he taught him how to recognize a value or something or some symbol if it is raised. And this person or this boy was his first pupil, means student. And Valentine Haüy, after some day, started a school for the blind. Next paragraph. Some years later, a blind man called Louis Braille, who was born in 1809 and died in 1852, also a Frenchman like Valentine Haüy, perfected a system of writing, especially for the blind. This writing is called Braille. So what happened? We get to know from this particular paragraph, a blind man whose name was Louis Braille. He was also a French man like Valentine Haüy, perfected a system, means came up with a system of writing, especially which was made for the blind people. And this particular writing was named after his surname, that is Braille. Braille is a special alphabet used by the blind. The alphabet is marked by raised dots on stiff paper, which blind people can understand by touch of their fingers. Louis Braille himself was blind and worked in a blind school in Paris. The system that he developed in 1834 was not used much until about the times of Braille's death in 1852. So what happened? This special alphabet which was used by the blind people was named as Braille, as it was came or perfected by Louis Braille. This alphabet was marked by raised dot, means the dots was raised type of, I will give you picture, you can see in the picture, and this dots was made on stiff paper so that the blind people can just pass away their finger over these dots and recognize the figures. And Louis Braille was himself a blind person who used to work in a blind school in Paris. So this particular style of writing, that is Braille, was not in use so much until and unless Louis Braille died in 1852. After that it came to use. Each letter in the Braille alphabet consists of one or more raised dots. In the diagram below, the small dots represent unraised marks and the large dots represent raised marks. So as you can see in the picture given in your book, you can see the Braille symbol for H, E, L and O. So as you can see, the green colors are raised, or the big one are raised, and the small dots are not raised. So first one is H, next is E, next is L and lastly O. From the diagram above, you can see that the letter H consists of 3 raised dots and the letter L consists of 3 dots, 2. However, the dots for H are in different pattern to those which make up the letter L. So as you can see, both H and L have 3 raised dots. But how you are going to understand that which one is H and which one is L? By the pattern. The pattern is different for H and L. As you can see, the pattern of the raised dot is different, means in the different position, therefore it is different. There are 6 possible positions for each dot. By placing the dots in various positions, 63 different patterns or shapes can be made. This means that there are patterns for each of the 26 letters of the alphabet. In addition to these 26 patterns, there are patterns for special words or words that are used a lot in everyday language. Some of the common words such as and, it, if, for, the, and many other frequently used words have one Braille symbol each. So as you can see, you can just change the position of the dot and make 6 possible positions for each dot. So by placing this position or changing this position, 63 different patterns were made, and all the 26 alphabet which we use from A to Z has different symbol or pattern. And in addition to this 26, we have a special words, means patterns for the special words which we use regularly or in day-to-day life. For example, we have symbol for and, if, it, for, the, and other frequently used words. For example, the word and occurs very frequently in English. To make it easier to read in Braille, it is written like this. So as you can see in the screen, and is written like this. Otherwise, each letter would have to be written like this. So these are the types and these are the way of writing Braille. Books in Braille have to be quite thick. So books which are written in Braille, the books are thick. Because why? We are going to learn why. This is because rest marks are punched on in a rows across the page. The rest marks have to be big enough to be felt by the fingertip. So the paper has to be stiff. Many books were written in Braille. Blind people can be taught how to read Braille, and in this way they too can read and enjoy the works of the great authors. There are also machines that help blind people to write Braille. So here we get to know about the books in Braille, which are quite thick because as we know, blind people can recognize the letter only when they pass the fingertips over the symbols, letters or something which is placed before them. So the books has to be thick enough so that they can understand by passing over their finger on the leaves of the pages. So here we also learn that as we all require to get updated, or we all love to read books to acquire knowledge, they also have right to acquire knowledge. So by this pattern, these patterns helped this particular blind peoples to enjoy the books written by the authors, and they also enjoy reading and writing. So there are also machines which help the blind people to write. So with this we come to the end of this particular chapter. And as you can see, we are given some of the Braille alphabet, that is from A to Z in your book. You can have a look for your knowledge. And as I said, this particular story is written by the famous author Nicholas Horsburgh. So with this we come to the end of this particular story. If you find the content of this story or this video helpful for you, then like, share, subscribe this channel, and also click on the bell icon to get notification of newly uploaded video in our channel. Students, keep learning, keep enjoying.